All right, you're good.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Chelsea Stevenson. I am the Education Specialist for the Board of Nursing. Also on with me is Carol Moreland. She is our Executive Administrator. And then Colton is our IT guru who's going to be helping this morning. So hopefully this goes well. I also have Michelle Brown. She's either joined or she will be. She's our Administrative Assistant for the Education Department. And so welcome to our CNE Coordinator Training. We did this about a year ago to kind of just share some information with you all on our annual report process and then also the 5-year renewal process for our long-term CNE providers. So this is just an overview of that information. We did, as you know, just wrap up our annual report period in July. So I just wanted to touch base on that a little bit. And then, like I said, just go over the 5-year renewal application process. And then I am happy to answer any questions at the end. And then also, if you have something come up, just feel free to shoot a question in the chat box or the Q&A box. And we'll keep an eye on that and go from there. So I did want to give you our contact information. Our email addresses and our phone numbers. Feel free to contact me or Michelle with any questions you may have pertaining to your CNE providership. Email is usually the best method to catch me by. That's usually how I can respond the quickest, but you can definitely give me a call as well. So I will be sending out this PowerPoint as well. And then Colton is recording this presentation to go on our website. So you can check back and review it, or if new coordinators come on board where you're at, they're able to watch it then as well. Let's see if I can, there we go. So the long-term program renewal process, your providerships are approved by the board for a period of 5 years. A renewal application then is due every 5 years at the end of that period. Your application must be submitted 60 days prior to a board meeting. Those meetings are scheduled March, June, September, and December every year. We have our board meeting schedule on our website. However, we do send you an email notice to you when your providership is coming up for renewal. So I try to get those out at least 90 days prior to the board meeting that your providership application would be reviewed at. Like I said, those are sent via email just to whatever email address we have for you all on record. I did just list our regulations and our statutes here. The Kansas Nurse Practice Act is available on our website for you to read. These are the regulations and the statutes that pertain to CNE specifically, the definitions of CNE, how we approve CNE, and then also how we approve those long-term providerships. And then the regulations and the statutes that pertain to what's approved for CNE, how we calculate contact hours, that sort of thing. It's all listed there, as well as the link to the Nurse Practice Act, like I said. So the 5-year renewal application is submitted electronically on our website. It is on our education page under continuing nursing education. On the right-hand side, we do have a section for our providers, and you'll see the 5-year renewal application link there. You are required to submit documentation electronically as well. Once you complete that online application, it will actually take you to a document submission page where you would upload the required documentation that I will talk about in just a few minutes. All those supporting documents must be attached in PDF format. It's up to you whether you attach them as one whole document or individual PDFs. It kind of just depends on the size of what you're uploading and whether or not our website would accept such a large size document or not. Normally, they are submitted individually, and that's fine. There is no fee for the 5-year renewal application. Sometimes this is a little confusing. There is the initial fee once you apply. There is the annual fee every year of $50. But there is no fee for reapplying. So once you pay that $200 application fee initially, you won't have to pay any additional application fee so long as your providership remains active. Parts of your application that will be included is the program coordinator. The information you would have to provide about this individual, which should be yourself, name, education, and experience. They must be a licensed registered nurse, have had 3 years of clinical experience, and then 1 year experience in developing a nursing education program of some sort. They do need to hold a degree, and then we also need to see the resume or the CV for that person. All of this information pertains if the coordinatorship changes. So if you move on to a different role, if you retire, if you leave, then the person coming on board would have to meet all of these requirements. The resume or the CV would need to be sent to me along with a letter from your organization stating when that change occurred. And then we review that information just to make sure they meet all of those regulatory requirements that are listed above. And then an approval is sent once that person is able to come on board. So these are the requirements then for the coordinator. Kathy, I just saw your question. Yes, I am going to email this PowerPoint out to everybody, so you will have that as well. Policies and procedures on your renewal application will include the assessment of the need and planning for CNE activities, your fee assessment, your advertisements or your offering announcements. There is specific terminology that must be used and included on that published information. And we'll kind of talk about that here in a little bit. And then, as I mentioned on the previous slide, the notice of change coordinator, you need to have a policy or procedure in place in writing for that as well. You also will submit a summary of your planning, the behavioral objectives for your CNE course, the content, which does need to meet the definition of CNE, the instructor's education and experience. So this is commonly their resume, and then a current bibliography, which is reflective of the offering content. And then we also need to see your evaluations. I did want to note for your evaluation, it should include each objective for your CNE and for each individual presenter. That's what your evaluation needs to cover. So sometimes we just get a broad evaluation submitted, but it has to specifically, the person attending has to evaluate each objective and then each individual presenter. Also included on your application is how we award CNE, the contact hours for the actual time attending, credit for fractions of hours over 30 minutes, which I will come back to and touch on in just a second, instructor credit, independent study credit, and clinical hours. So how are we awarding CNE for all of those areas? A question that I get commonly is if we can award CNE for less than an hour. There needs to be at least 1 hour attended, and then we can award CNE for fractions of over 30 minutes. So there has to at least be that 1 hour attended. Then we need a documentation of attendance. Each participant is required to sign a daily roster, and that roster has to contain the information listed here. So we need your organization's name, address, your provider number, which is assigned by the Board of Nursing. It's that number that begins with the letters LT, and then the name of the coordinator, the date and title of the offering, and the presenter or presenters, and then also the participant's name and their license number, and then the number of contact hours awarded. These requirements are all still true for virtual courses. This has been something new, obviously, in the face of the pandemic. Many of our providers switched to a virtual format, which is completely fine. However, all requirements that are laid out in our regulations and statutes still stand. Those have not changed. So there has to be some way for a participant to sign a daily roster. They have to somehow prove that attendance, that they didn't just log into a Zoom meeting, turn off their video, mute their mic, and go clean their house. There has to be some way to prove that they participated actively. Each provider is kind of doing things a little bit differently. You know, there is an electronic signature method. Sometimes they're handing out codes in the middle or towards the end of a session. And then the participant would email or somehow turn in that code to the provider, and that's how they would get their certificate of completion. So it's kind of up to you. We've had to be creative, of course, with the pandemic, but I just want to make sure it's clear that these requirements still stand even in the virtual format. We need documentation of independent study if this is something that your offering will provide. It's kind of the same thing: provider name, address, number, and coordinator name, the participants' information there, the name of the offering, when that offering was completed, and then either the completion of a post-test or a return demonstration. And then we kind of move towards the certificate of attendance. This is given to the participants after they have completed your course. It has to contain all of the information listed here. Again, your organization's name, address, and that LT number, the title of the offering, the date that it was completed, the number of contact hours awarded, and the signature of whomever is responsible for your providership. So most commonly, that's the coordinator, you. And then the name and the license number of the participant. Your renewal application every 5 years should also include your policies on record keeping and storage. For each offering, the provider is to retain all of this information listed on this slide for 2 years. It has to be somewhere secure, has to assure confidentiality, and then it has to be easily retrieved by only those individuals who are authorized to retrieve it. So that should include your summary of planning, copies of your announcements or your brochures, the titles and objectives, your agendas, bibliographies, the evaluations. It can be a summary of those, each instructor's education and experience, so their resumes or CVs, and then the documentation to verify that that offering was completed. And then the total program evaluation. So this is, as I listed here, it's a process by which you all will analyze your outcomes of your program. So it's kind of just a broad overview of what your program has done. We do have a sample plan available. It's on our website on the renewal application page. Feel free to use that. Many of our providers do. It's probably the easiest way to make sure you're including all the information needed. But you can also create your own if that's something that you already have in place with your organization. I'm just checking a couple of questions here. So for the license number, you're right. Many will only submit the 5 middle numbers. That's okay. I would prefer, if you have it, to have the entire license number listed. That kind of just helps when we're having to look up nurses' information if they call with questions, et cetera. That helps us ensure we have the right person. It's a little bit easier to search and just verify. But if all you have are those 5 middle numbers, that's fine as well. It does not have to be a paper signature. It can be an electronic signature. Like I said, many organizations are kind of navigating this on their own and trying to figure out how they can implement that signature piece. But an electronic signature is completely fine. There's a lot of online participants now. We just have to somehow verify that the nurse attended, actively participated, and then successfully completed. So they have to show that something was learned. Next up on your renewal application, we do need you to submit 2 proposed offerings. So those proposed offerings need to include the following information: the summary of planning, the announcement or brochure, the objectives, the agenda, the instructor's education, a current bibliography, and then the evaluation form. This should be for each proposed offering. So like I said, your evaluation form, for example, needs to be specific to the objectives for offering 1 and the objectives for offering 2. So there should be 2 evaluation forms submitted. Same with your agendas, bibliographies, they should be specific to each offering. I do want to note that we do not need the entire PowerPoint presentation that you may be offering in one of your course offerings. If your bibliography is listed within that or your objectives are listed within that, you can certainly send me that page with just that slide. But I do not need the entire PowerPoint presentation. And in fact, if that's submitted, it will just be omitted and shredded. It won't be submitted to the board for their review. So less is best for paper-wise when we're working on your applications. It can include, like you can tell, a lot of information. So we just really want to submit to the board what's absolutely necessary and required for them to review. So the education specialist, which is me, I will review the 5-year renewal application to ensure it's complete. It is completely common for me to reach out to you in that process to let you know if something's missing or maybe we need to tweak something. But it's my responsibility to make sure that we are looking good to submit your paperwork to the board for their review. So if you don't hear anything from me, no news is good news. That means we're complete. But like I said, if I have questions or I need some clarification or a piece is missing, I'll typically email you, just let you know, and you can just email that information back to me and we'll get your application ready to go. The CNE and IV Therapy Committee then reviews those applications during board week, and then they will vote to either approve or deny that application. Oops. And then the following day, the board will make the final vote to either approve or deny the application. After the board meets on Wednesday of board week, the final decision will then be mailed to you all. We will send you a letter letting you know what the board has decided. And then if you're reapproved, you will also receive another certificate that denotes your approval and when your next expiration date would be. So that is kind of the process for the 5-year the 5-year renewal application process. Like I said, all of this information is available on our website. We also have a checklist that we use when we're reviewing applications to make sure everything is in place. The process that we just recently started was to email that checklist to you when we email you the notice that you are up for your 5-year renewal. So feel free to use that document when you're completing your application to make sure you're checking off the boxes, make sure we have everything there. You know exactly what it is that we're looking for, what is required, and kind of just go through the list and the motions. That'll certainly help cut out a lot of time and kind of eliminate some of those errors. If you'd like to see that checklist, just send me an email anytime. I'd be happy to send it to you for you to kind of just hold on to as you're preparing. You certainly don't have to wait till the last minute to prepare your renewal application. And it might come in handy just to have that on board as you're gathering the information. So if you'd like a copy of that, just send me an email and I'd be happy to get that sent to you. And then we're going to move on to our CNE Annual Report. So this is what we all just completed. Each approved long-term provider is to pay a fee for the upcoming year. And then you'll also submit an annual report. And that annual report covers data from July 1st through June 30th of the previous year. It is due, the annual report and the $50 annual fee, no later than July 31st. So what you all just submitted was for data covering July 1st, 2020 through June 30th of 2021. And then your $50 annual fee covers the next year through next June 30th. This annual report also, again, requires the total program evaluation, or the TPE. It has to be attached to the annual report before that report will be submitted electronically. Again, you can use the one that's on our website, or you can formulate your own if that's something you already have in place. For each of the first 2 years of the providership, you must attach the following documents for one CNE offering, okay? Or if your initial approval occurred after July 1st, 2012, then you must submit the following for one CNE offering for each year. So we need a summary of planning, the announcements or brochures, the title objectives, the agenda, the bibliography, the evaluations. Again, it can be a summary of those evaluations, your education and experiences for your instructors, and then again, the documentation to verify the completion of that offering. That was a very quick overview of the annual report because we just did it. I wasn't sure how in depth I needed to go. We did really well this year. I want to thank you all for getting those submitted timely. I guess one point I would touch on is that because of the pandemic, we obviously have had a decrease maybe in the amount of CNE that's been offered. So even if you had a year where you didn't offer any CNE courses for whatever reason, The annual report and the total program evaluation are still required. You still have to submit something. Even if it is zeros across the board, we still have to have something from you for that year. So hopefully we're able to kind of return to maybe a new normal moving forward and kind of begin offering more CNE than in the years past. But if your numbers are lower or again, still zero, we still do require that information to be submitted. So that is what I had for the PowerPoint. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I will be emailing out the slides to everybody, so you'll have those. And like I said, this will also be on our website for you to go back and review, or if you have new people come on board. But if you have any questions, you can drop them over in the chat box or the Q&A box. Don't see anything coming across.
There is one in Q&A.
Oh, is there one? My mouse just stopped working for all of us all of a sudden. That's a good time. We've had a heck of a time with IT.
Yes, we have.
Not the least.
No. Okay, if it's been more than 2 years, I think that's the question. Then you would submit an offering for each and for something for each offering. Correct, Carol? Am I wording that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Carol oversaw this position before me, so I'm still learning lots from her. I've been in this role since it's been a year now, so. Okay, well, I do not see any further questions, so I don't want to keep you longer than necessary, but if you have any more questions, like I said, please give me a call or email me or Michelle. We're happy to help anytime. I will get these emailed out to you all later this week. Oh, I just saw a question pop up. Oh, thanks, Kathy. You're welcome. And thank you again for being providers for us for CNE. I know it has been a trying time with COVID. We've kind of had to adjust the sails and do things differently than in the past. And you all have really made some great accommodations to ensure that we're still getting the CNE out to the nurses. It is very much needed and appreciated. So thank you for all that you do for us. And like I said, get in touch with me if you have questions. Thanks, everybody.